All right, welcome in Powers on Sports podcast. We are mid-March. It's spring break for a lot of people around the country. Spring break here in the state of Florida for the kids here in the high school scene down here in the Tampa Bay area. We are almost to Selection Sunday. We have about a week to go to Selection Sunday. We have NFL free agency starting on Monday of next week. We've got Major League Baseball starting in a couple of weeks. Spring training's in full bloom here in the state of Florida and out in Arizona. Lots of stuff going on. Got This is little guys week in the world of college basketball. All the small conference tournaments mostly are finishing late this weekend and early next week. You'll see all these small championship games throughout the country, all over the place on ESPN and Fox Sports. This is a great week for the little guys here in the college basketball. You got the women's college basketball conference tournaments going on, their selection show. Shout out to Caitlin Clark, who just broke Pete Maravich's overall scoring record. Give a large shout out to her for doing that. Great accomplishment. Let's don't pit Caitlin Clark against Pete Maravich. Who's better? Who's not? Obviously, the standards and the flow of play differently. No 3-point line back in the day for Pete. All that stuff, but two great accomplishments. Let's celebrate both people. So, because what Pete Maravich did was incredible, what Caitlin Clark has done is incredible. It's great for the game. It's great for the sport. It's great for women's basketball. So let's celebrate Caitlin Clark and let's not try to bring her down or compare her wholeheartedly to Pete Maravich and vice versa. So both Pete and Caitlin with tremendous accomplishments, and let's celebrate those. But Caitlin is the all-time leading scorer in the history of college basketball. So good for her. So we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna hit on the NCAA tournament. We're gonna hit on the NFL free agency. We're also gonna hit on a couple coaching situations around college basketball that have been cleared up a little bit that I got a couple thoughts on, and a nice announcement of where we're going to be next week. Yours truly is going to be out in Las Vegas next week as part of the Mountain West tournament, men's Mountain West tournament in Las Vegas next Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Going to be part of the tune-in broadcast coverage with my guy TJ Reeves. Going to be doing the national radio of the championship game of the Mountain West next Saturday night. So we are going to be having a little fun trip out to Las Vegas. It'll be very exciting out there. You'll have the Pac-12 tournament. You have the Mountain West, the remnants of the WAC. You'll have a little bit remnants of the West Coast Conference tournament's going to be out there as well next week. So lots of stuff going on in Las Vegas, and we'll be part of the action. We'll be rolling along at the Westgate and the Thomas and Mack Center and all the stuff, all the fun in between. So that's a little bit of news of where we'll be next week. But as far as before we get to that, I want to just comment a little bit about the couple of passings. One, Chris Mortensen, longtime NFL insider for ESPN. He passed away 5-6 days ago. Just a tremendous guy from all indications. He was kind of the original insider in the NFL. Not the original, but he was a prime insider for multiple decades with ESPN back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. With him, Berman, Tom Jackson on the pregame show. You had the Mort Report during the weeks where he would give you great nuggets about different things about the NFL. He was the first guy that you would usually see all week long as opposed to just on Sundays. Back in the day, you had Will McDonough, who did a great job with insider information, things like that. But Mortensen was the guy you would see all throughout the week on ESPN, a Mort Report a couple days a week. He'd be giving you nuggets throughout the week, sports centers, things like that, as well as all the stuff he would provide on Sunday. But just tough loss with Chris Mortensen passing away. He was very tight with so many people around the league. Obviously, he was very tight with the Mannings. Broke those stories big time. He was, very tight with a lot of people. So just give a shout out to Chris Mortensen and his family for the passing of Chris Mortensen. Also want to just a little personal news. I just found out my relative in the family, my aunt Sandy, who lived up in Michigan, she suddenly passed away in Mexico on a vacation. My uncle and her were on a vacation in Mexico where they like to go once a year all the time for many, many years. Um, so just want to give a shout out to Aunt Sandy, who tragically passed away. Luckily, she passed away in her sleep. So it was not something tragic and nefarious, but she was 75 years old. So, and she was a huge Green Bay Packer fan. They lived up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So just in Wisconsin, they love the Packers. She loved the Packers. Diehard Packers fan. We always chit chat the week of a Bucks Packer game and all that good stuff. So I just wanted to give a shout out to my aunt Sandy Tatro, who passed away at the age of 75. And want to give a shout out to Dad. Dad had a little medical procedure this week, and things are going to be fine with him. But he made it through his surgery on Thursday just fine. So just want to speedy recovery for Dad. I got to go help him cut the grass and all that. But Dad, I expect you to be out there running around, doing your thing here in short order. So, Dad, thinking of you as well. So, a couple of medical updates. Want to let you guys know. Also, again, Powers on Sports podcast. Jason Powers Sports channel on YouTube. You can check out the videos, our video interviews on X and Twitter at JPO Sports. If you have any interest in contributing or donating to the podcast, you can do that on Venmo or Cash App at Sports Powers. If you have any desires to help contribute to the podcast and to our future growth and such, you're welcome to do that. Would love any help, any contributions you'd be interested in doing at Venmo or Cash App at Sports Powers. So, but appreciate everybody's support. Remember, I'm going to be part of the College Basketball Coast to Coast podcast. We've been doing Saturday night streamings and podcasts for the last 3 or 4 weeks. We're going to do that for the next 3 or 4 weeks as well through March Madness. So typically every Saturday night, we do a live podcast somewhere around 9:30, 10 o'clock Eastern time. Go to the College Basketball Coast to Coast on Twitter. You can find us there. You can stream us on YouTube, on Facebook. Check out my Facebook page, YouTube channel. We'll be sharing the stream. TJ Reeves and I are going through the nights and the days full of college basketball action. Obviously, this will be the last weekend of the regular season for the Power 5 conferences, and then we'll have some conference tournament stuff to talk about. And then we'll be doing it next weekend from Vegas, and we'll be doing it throughout the NCAA tournament. So we've been having some good audience. Love to have you join us on the College Basketball Coast to Coast podcast. That podcast will come out on Sunday morning as well. You can find that podcast, College Basketball Coast to Coast podcast, that'll in podcast form. But if you want to watch us live Saturday night, check that out. And go to my Twitter. You can go to my Twitter handle, JPO Sports, and we'll be sharing that stuff on Saturday night as soon as we start the broadcast. So would love to have you join us. Again, we will have guests on from all over the country, talking brackets, talking conferences, talking different stuff. We got West Coast guys. We got guys from the SEC, the Big Ten, all over the place that we're talking Big East. So we got the full country covered, college basketball, coast to coast. All right, NCAA bubble. In my view, there's probably 12 teams for about 6 spots. There's a wide, there's most of the at-large bids. We kind of know who's going to be an at-large bid. But again, those final 5 or 6 spots are the ones that we're going to debate. You and I are going to watch conference tournaments. We're going to debate who's going to be in. Is St. John's in? Is New Mexico in? Is Wake Forest in? Is Providence? Is, Iowa? Ole Miss, Mississippi State, teams like that are the ones that we're going to be debating on the bubble. And interesting thing here is these bubble teams, as we talk about every year, and especially this year, you do not want a bid stealing situation. You got a couple of conference situations where you could have a bid steal. For example, the Pac-12. Most people think there's only 2 teams coming out of the Pac-12, Arizona and Washington State. if you're one of these bubble teams, you do not want a non Pac-12 champion that his name is not Arizona or Washington State, which means that's going to be a bid stealer. So you don't want a USC and Oregon, a Washington to pull an upset, figure out a way to win that tournament. They're going to be a bid stealer. Same with a conference like the ACC. Not that I think anybody, the ACC is probably going to have 4, maybe 5 teams. Duke, Carolina, probably Clemson. The debate is Virginia in, is Wake Forest in, but you don't want one of those. You don't want somebody outside of those 5 teams to win that conference, or that's going to be a bid steal. So bid stealers are going to be something that's going to really affect the bubble. There's not a whole lot. West Coast Conference is another example. St. Mary's and Gonzaga are in the tournament. You don't want a team like San Francisco, who's decent but not tournament worthy as of yet, to go win that tournament and steal a bid, because that's just one less spot for one of those bubble teams. But you're probably looking at 6 spots available in the bubble. There's probably 12 teams, 10, 12 teams that have a arguable defense of why they deserve to be in. So that's probably what you're looking at on the bubble as we move through next week. Teams like St. John's, teams like Wake Forest, teams like Mississippi State, like Virginia, they gotta do some damage in their conference tournaments for sure, because their resumes are just very, very mediocre. Good enough to put you on the bubble, but you got to win your way into this tournament. You can't just keep slogging in neutral and slide in the back door. Another example, a team like in the AAC, the American Conference, there's debate. Is South Florida in the tournament? South Florida's won 20 out of 21 games, or they've won 15 games in a row, got the longest winning streak in the country. Their metrics are not great, but if you've won 15 games in a row in the American Conference and you've won 20 out of 21 games, you're in the freaking tournament. I don't care what happened. I mean, they've got one more regular season game and one conference game for sure, but to me, there's no way you can keep that team out of the NCAA tournaments. Amir Abdul-Rahim has done a tremendous job. They've beaten FAU. They had FAU down by 25 when they played them. Beat them. They were down 20 at Memphis, came back to win the game, beat SMU, swept Charlotte. This team has got to be in the NCAA tournament. If you look at their metrics, they're in the high 70s, low 80s. They had a couple of bad losses early in the year, and I get it. But when you look at their body of work, who they've beat, how they're playing, the eye test, that is an NCAA tournament team. If you've not watched this team play, they are an NCAA tournament team. We saw Seth Davis and others that don't know anything about South Florida and are making national statements. They got to win. They got to win the American Conference to get in. To me, that's just garbage. You got Scott Van Pelt saying, teams that are you have to know what you're talking about a little bit if you're going to make these judgments on these national platforms, especially if you have a national voice like these guys do. South Florida absolutely better be in this basketball tournament, or that it will be a crime of epic proportions. But as far as bid stealers, the American Conference, you probably are going to get FAU, USF in. A team like Memphis is on the bubble. Team like potentially Charlotte, SMU. That's another situation where if one of those SMU, Memphis's, Charlotte were to win that conference tournament, that's probably going to be a bid stealer from somebody else. So that's again, that will be a very intriguing tournament next week in Fort Worth, Texas. But again, South Florida, FAU are in the tournament in my view. Should be no doubt about that based on what they've done on the court. All right. So again, there's your college again. So that when you're watching college basketball this weekend, be thinking about the bubble. When you're watching some of these conference tournaments, most of these leagues are just going to be one bid leagues. A couple of conferences to keep your eye on, that teams that if they can keep their regular season dominance going through the conference tournament are going to be a scary team and a team to have to be reckoned with come tournament time. A team like Samford in the Southern Conference shoot a ton of threes. They've won that league's regular season title. If they can win that conference tournament, they're clearly the best team in that league. They're going to be a team that'll give some be a pain in the neck to somebody in the tournament because as many threes as they shoot, and they make so many threes as well. Bucky McMillan and Samford. You got a team like High Point, North Carolina, Asheville in the Big South. Asheville was in the tournament last year, got a really good big man. High Point's had a great year. They're the regular season one seed. So High Point and Asheville, the winner of that, most likely, if both those guys make the final, the winner of that's going to go to the tournament. Could be a little bit of a irritant, pain in the neck kind of team as well. So keep your eye on those small conference tournaments. Again, you're going to have the Sun Belt. You got McNeese State. Will Wade has had a tremendous regular season. Remember the Will Wade, the former LSU coach who got in trouble with the FBI stuff on, about paying players and all that kind of good stuff, among other things. He's at McNeese State now. They've had a tremendous turnaround. If they can win their conference, they've been the dominant team in that conference. They can be a little bit of a pain in the neck in the tournament as well. So as you're watching these small conference tournaments this weekend, the semifinals and finals, be thinking about these are some of your potential giant killers next week in Selection Sunday. So keep your eye on that as well. And again, six. I think there's 12 teams for 6 spots. Is my view. Again, you can look at all the bracketology people, Lenardi, Chris Daubertine and company, Jerry Palm. They're going to have their last 4 in, first 4 out, next 4. All that. So you got about 12 teams that are vying for probably 5 or 6 at-large bids at the bottom of the bracket. So that's always the interesting part. That's why those guys get paid a nice little chunk of change to do what they do. And it'd be interesting again what the tournament committee values other than straight metrics, because the metrics can be manipulated. The metrics can be based on scheduling and stuff like that. But you also have to use the eye test. A note on the selection committee: there is a good range and good variety of big school athletic directors and small school athletic directors. The selection committee chair is from the SWAC conference, so that's a good thing that you got some smaller conference representation. So you will have a good mix of larger conference committee members and smaller conference committee members as part of the selection committee. So there will be some opportunity to fight for the little guy, for the South Floridas of the world. If there's any debate whether that team should be in the tournament, and there's no debate, that team should be in the tournament. So, all right, there's your NCAA update. Again, this is little guy week. Again, remember, guys and ladies, this is probably the last game that a lot of these people will ever play in their life. So there'll be a lot of emotion, a lot of tension, a lot of anxiety in these small conference tournaments, because again, this is the last game 99% of these seniors will ever play in their life as far as competitive athletics will be when if they lose in their conference tournament or when they lose in the NCAA tournament. That's what you got to love about the NCAA tournament. Everybody gets an opportunity to go to the NCAA tournament, whether you're at Southwest Louisiana, whether you're at Marist, whether you're at San Diego, whether you're at Portland State, you get a chance to make the NCAA tournament if you win your conference tournament, as opposed to college football, where so much of it is predetermined by what conference you're in and such. So that's the beauty of this tournament, is everybody gets a chance to make the big dance. You get your chance to go win your conference tournament and make the dance. So that's what the beauty of it is. And let's don't expand the tournament. 68 teams is a great number. Let's don't expand the tournament. There's plenty of opportunity for the 6th or 7th place team in the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Big 12 to make the tournament. Let's don't expand it. It's great as it is. It's great as you got 4 play-in games, which is great. And by the way, potential play-in game, how about Rick Pitino, St. John's against New Mexico, and Richard Pitino, his son, in Dayton? Would that not be a hell of a TV game for True TV and such? How about St. John's and New Mexico, 2 teams that are clearly right on the bubble? You could see that potentially in Dayton on Tuesday or Wednesday night of the play-in games. How about a Pitino versus Pitino scenario in Dayton? That'd be pretty cool, I think, for TV. So, all right, there you go. There's your college basketball, couple coaching nuggets. Mike Woodson's going to be back in Indiana. A lot of talk whether he was going to come back to Indiana. Indiana's announced he's coming back. There was about a $13 million buyout that they did not want to pay, apparently, or were leery of paying. So Mike Woodson back for another year at Indiana. Tough one there, because they really have struggled. I just saw that their All-American commit for 2024 is just decommitted. So that is not a good sign either with a kid from IMG, high school senior. So Mike Woodson will clearly be front and center on the hot burner next year as far as the Indiana job. Louisville, you would imagine Kenny Payne's going to get let go. I would imagine at Louisville. You got the Ohio State opening, so you're going to have some openings, some guys to keep an eye on. Potentially Mick Cronin, maybe UCLA. Obviously, they're going to the Big Ten now. They've had a really rough season. NIL's an issue at UCLA. Could Mick Cronin, who has some Midwest roots, Louisville, Kentucky, Cincinnati, could he be potentially in the mix to go to Louisville? Ohio State could be in the mix. Could Dusty May, FAU coach, could he be in the mix for one of these Midwestern jobs? So you're going to see a couple of these jobs get open here. Be interesting to see what happens at a couple of these other jobs as well. There'll be a surprise firing. Again, I don't think Cal's in any trouble now because they've responded. But if Kentucky were to go out in the first round, could Cal potentially there be a parting of the ways at Kentucky with Cal? I still think that's still in play to some degree if they lose in the first round as well. So keep the thought of that. Could a guy like Leonard Hamilton at Florida State retire? Who knows? But you got some. There'll be some opportunity. I think a couple jobs will pop open here as the season unwinds. So there'll be some but as of right now, we know the Ohio State job is open. That's a big job. Louisville's probably going to be open. That's going to be a job with some interest. But Mike Woodson will be staying at Indiana as of now. He'll be back next year in 2024. So, all right. Let's pivot to the National Football League. Free agency is right around the corner. You got free agency starts on Monday with the tampering, the 2 days of tampering, even though 5 days of tampering just happened at the NFL Combine with many of these, with all the GMs and agents in the building. You can be assured that's the biggest tampering party in the world is at the NFL Combine amongst agents and GMs and all those people. So, but the official start of the new league year is next Wednesday, excuse me. But Monday, Tuesday is kind of the legal tampering period. You'll see a lot of deals get done. But the theme of early free agency is going to be the quarterback situation. Russell Wilson available, Kirk Cousins available, Justin Fields available. You got the draft. How do those guys play into the teams that are looking for a quarterback? Because you obviously have the draft class of Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and Caleb Williams, and those other guys, JJ McCarthy. You have a pretty robust quarterback population in the draft, and you combine that with the free agency opportunities of Russell Wilson, Cousins, Justin Fields. Baker Mayfield is the guy that there's some chatter that he could be potentially on the move as well. Franchise tags have been announced. A slew of running backs are available. No franchise tags. You got Swift, you got Barkley, you got Derrick Henry, you got Tony Pollard. You got a slew of really good Eckler's available. You got a ton of really good running backs out there on the market. It will be interesting to see where those guys end up trickling down. Could a guy like Saquon Barkley go to Dallas? Could a guy like Barkley go to Houston, the Texans? Where will Derrick Henry end up? Baltimore is probably in the market for a running back. So you got some big playoff teams that are going to be in the market for a running back. That would be interesting to see where these guys go. But as far as the quarterback situation, Russell Wilson, remember, $39 million guarantee getting paid by Denver. So whoever signs him is going to sign him for a $1 or $2 million deal. Pittsburgh is going to be a viable option. Minnesota, if Kirk Cousins goes elsewhere, will be a viable option. Will the Giants potentially be a viable option with Daniel Jones's knee situation? He only got one more year left on his deal. That's going to be a viable situation. I don't think Atlanta is going to be a situation. They're going to be in the Russell Wilson business, but I think it's going to be probably come down to Minnesota, Pittsburgh would be my guess. What is Denver going to do at quarterback? Do they draft somebody? They're probably going to draft somebody because of the financial hit they're taking with Russell Wilson. But as far as Russell Wilson goes, I'm going to say Pittsburgh or Minnesota will be my guess there of where Russell Wilson goes. Kirk Cousins, all the tea leaves seem to be pointing to Atlanta for Kirk Cousins. His wife is from the Atlanta area. He, allegedly that there's been some chatter of he's looking for property. He's looking for private schools for his kids. So I think Atlanta is going to make a big run at Kirk Cousins. I think Cousins will either go to Atlanta or go back to Minnesota will be my thought there. I'm going to say Atlanta. I think Atlanta is going to make a big move. Raheem Morris, Arthur Blank. They got a ready-made team they think, especially on offense, of guys that they think are ready to go. Bijan, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. So I'm gonna say Kirk Cousins to Atlanta. I think Minnesota, if they lose Cousins, they'll be in the Russell Wilson business or potentially or draft somebody. They're probably going to draft somebody as well, but probably a 1 year bridge if they draft somebody to groom him for the 1 year. Justin Fields. Apparently, the trade chatter with Justin Fields has cooled off a little bit as far as the compensation, but I do think he'll get traded. I think Tampa is an opportunity if Baker Mayfield were to leave Tampa. I think Justin Fields would be in the mix as the Bucs making a trade for Justin Fields. The Bucs did just re-sign Mike Evans, so they're keeping their offensive Evans, Godwin, Rachaad White intact. But if Baker Mayfield gets out of Tampa, and if I'm Tampa, I'm not paying him more than $35 million. I know there's talk of he wants $40+ million and wants a deal better than Daniel Jones. If I'm the Buccaneers, you can't pay Baker Mayfield $40+ million. So I'm sorry, he's not shown he can put together multiple years of consistent play. I'd give him a 2 year, 75 million, 2 year, 3 year, $90 million deal with 65 guaranteed, something like that. I'd give him 2 years of guaranteed money, and that'd be about it. If he doesn't take that, there's chatter that New England could be involved. Could Minnesota be involved? Who knows? Could Atlanta be involved in Baker Mayfield if Cousins doesn't go to Atlanta? But again, if I'm the Buccaneers, I don't go any more than $35 million at the absolute max. Because there's other guys out there. You could make a trade for Justin Fields. You could draft somebody. You still got Kyle Trask. And I know you want to keep Baker Mayfield, but you cannot overpay the farm for Baker Mayfield if I'm the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So that's what I would do there. And again, franchise tags all over the place. You got a lot of defensive players getting the tag, Antoine Winfield getting the tag and such. So the free agency market, you'll have some wide receivers available. Calvin Ridley, some other guys are going to be out there. So it'll be interesting to see what some of these teams do early. You've seen teams are having to get under the salary cap. Buffalo's made a lot of moves. They've gotten rid of a lot of guys, named guys that you're going to see. Denver's gotten rid of a couple of guys, Justin Simmons. So there's going to be a lot of big names here in these first couple of days of free agency. So it will be flying on the Adam Schefter Twitter feed come Monday and Tuesday when these deals get agreed upon on Monday, Tuesday, and announced. But the quarterbacks are going to be the major theme here early on. Where will the quarterbacks go? Russ, Cousins, Mayfield, Justin Fields. So that will then help dictate potentially maybe some of the draft pick situations. Sounds like from all indications, the Bears are going to take Caleb Williams. From what you've heard coming out of the combine, that's probably the right move if you're the Bears. I think you probably have to do that if you're the Bears there. Get what you can get for Justin Fields and move on and go get Caleb Williams. You still have another number one draft pick and like number 8 or 9 in the draft. You could trade down to accumulate some more picks there and still probably get a wide receiver if you wanted to do that. You could probably trade down and probably get an offensive lineman if you wanted to do that still. But if you're the Bears at 1, you probably almost have to take Caleb Williams at 1. You could potentially trade down to 2 if Washington gave you a unbelievable offer to move down from 1 to 2 and then take Jaden Daniels. You could do that and accumulate some Washington picks. Because remember, Caleb Williams grew up in Washington, high school kid from Washington D.C. So if the Commanders really wanted to blow the roof off the draft and go get Caleb Williams, they could do that. And if you're the Bears, you could potentially trade down to 2 and take Jaden Daniels and still accumulate the picks and do all that stuff. But you're probably going to take Caleb Williams, I think, if you're the Chicago Bears. So there's your NFL news and notes. Again, it'll be a wild couple of days in the NFL early next week. Your favorite team will be doing something. Every team in the league will most likely be doing something next week. And again, you have to be under the salary cap as the league year starts. So there'll be still a lot of moves to be made this weekend, restructuring, releases. Don't be surprised if some trades get announced and all that good stuff. So interesting, exciting time of the year for your NFL team as they start the rebuild of their team for 2024. So appreciate you finding us on the Powers on Sports podcast. Remember, we'll be in Vegas next week for the Mountain West tournament. I will have a podcast for you before I head to Vegas. So we'll have a little podcast for you there. Remember, college basketball coast to coast podcast Saturday night live. And if you can't catch us live on Saturday night around probably 9:30, 10 o'clock Eastern time, check us out. The podcast will be out in podcast form on Sunday morning. So check that out, and appreciate the support. And again, if you have any interest in contributing or donating to the podcast, you can do that at Venmo or Cash App at Sports Powers. Love any contributions. Thanks for the support. Again, check out the video content on the Powers on Sports, on the Jason Powers Sports channel on YouTube. And again, find us on X at JPO Sports. Love to hear your comments. So have a great week. Enjoy a little bit of March Madness tournament week, NFL free agency, and we'll see you next time on the Powers on Sports podcast.